Are you ready for a family favorite recipe? Well, come on along. Let me show you this week's family favorite recipe. So let's get cooking. Hello, family and friends. I'm Susan, and welcome to my home. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and what better way to show your Valentine that you love them than to make a homemade lasagna? A warm, filling meal your whole family will love. And it's so easy. Why don't you come along with me and let me show you how I make our homemade lasagna. My ponytail is already up. Let's get to cooking. And we are going to do some of my favorite homemade lasagna. I, of course, have gotten the traditional spaghetti sauce from Aldi's. It's always my favorite. I've got my big bag of mozzarella I'm going to be using. My cottage cheese, because I don't like ricotta, believe it or not. I like cottage cheese better. Some Parmesan cheese to go on there. A little bit of garlic salt and Italian seasoning. And of course some lasagna noodles. And I'm going to be making some garlic bread to go along with it. So I have some garlic herb topped Italian loaf that of course I got on sale that I'm going to be making garlic bread with. And of course the star of the show, 1 pound of hamburger meat. I'm going to go ahead and get this browned up and get the noodles softened up in the water, and then we'll start assembling the lasagna my way. I wish I had an elongated pan that would fit all noodles like this, but I don't. So what I do is I've added some salt to the water, and I'm just going to go ahead and put the lasagna noodles in, and as they get warmer, I'll push them down into the water so they can all get cooked up and nice and al dente, or to some degree close to al dente, because they're going to cook again when you put them in the oven. So I've got this ready to roll, and then I will bring you back when it's time to assemble the lasagna. Let's go ahead and start assembling the lasagna. The first thing on the bottom is to put a couple of spoonfuls of the spaghetti sauce. Like I said, I'm just doing a small amount. If you do the whole 9 yards of it, you'll make a pretty good bit. And of course, my favorite spaghetti sauce is the Traditionals from Aldi's, always. Make sure that you got a nice little layer on the bottom. It helps it from the noodles sticking on the bottom. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put the noodles on. See if I can figure out about how I want to be able to cut them. Since this is not a nice long noodle pan, I'm just going to do the best I can with that. It's a little uneven, but it's okay. I'm going to put the first layer. Okay. Which this pan nicely fits 3. All right, that looks pretty good. Okay, now after you get the noodles on, you're going to start layering your meat and cheeses. And usually the first thing I like to do is go ahead and get the cheese on there. First cheese I like to do is, whoopsie, mozzarella. So let's go ahead and get some mozzarella cheese on the noodles. And I forgot, I needed to have put in the spaghetti sauce on the bottom, but that's okay. We'll do it here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put some more of the spaghetti sauce right here, which should have been first, but I kind of got out of order, but that's okay. It's all going to be good. It's all going to cook together, and it don't matter because it's going to be amazing. And then once this gets hot, the sauce will melt and go all over the place, so it will be good and nice and saucy. The next thing I like to do is the cottage cheese. And yes, I use my hands, and I should have some gloves on. But it's just cottage cheese, and I just go through here and pop it on. My hands are nice and washed. I wash them constantly, which y'all I know don't see off screen because I basically take the footage out, because every time I get anything on my hands get washed because I cannot stand stuff on my hands. And I'm just basically putting a little bit kind of everywhere. Again, this is cheese. It will melt. It will disperse itself all over this lasagna. And yes, I'm about to go wash that off. See? Nice and clean, and even still wet actually. But that's okay. I'm gonna do that quite a few times during all this. The next thing I'm going to be putting on here is going to be the Parmesan cheese. I do like this shake Parmesan when it comes to this, and I just do a thin little layer over on each layer because I like 3 different cheeses. So we've got mozzarella, we've got cottage cheese, we've got Parmesan. And then I like to put a little bit of Italian seasoning. Just sprinkle a dab over each layer. Not that it needs a whole lot because I know the sauce has plenty in it. And then the hot or the warm meat is the last thing that goes on because it's still a little bit warm, and it will melt the cheeses a little bit as it goes on. It's not too hot. That's good. I can actually handle it and it ain't burning me. Of the big pan of meat, I try to do in 3 sections. That way I kind of know how much I want on each section. There we go. And now for the second layer. I'm going to go ahead and put the noodles in there. And of course, if you have a pan that's big enough, you don't have to worry about fitting noodles. And again, spaghetti sauce. And just put it over the noodles. And as you can see, I am running them down the noodles themselves. This is the way that first layer should have been done. I got a little ahead of myself, but that's okay. It'll all be good in the end because this tastes so good. Try not to put too awful much spaghetti sauce, although it's all going to be so awesome it doesn't matter too much, but still. I like to cover my noodles decently. And again, the cottage cheese. And this is just so easy. I actually am not going to have any type of recipe with it because you're seeing what I'm doing. There isn't an absolute on recipe. You just do it as you need it for your container. Mozzarella cheese is going on next, and then the parm. It doesn't matter if you put a little bit or a lot of Parmesan, mozzarella. It's usually good with a good little bit because it's going to melt and make it all nice and gooey and cheese pulling the whole 9 yards. And then the Parmesan is going on. And this is the middle layer. So I put a little bit of garlic salt in the middle layer. This is the only layer I put garlic salt in. I have put it in all 3 layers before and it was too much. Trust me. So just a little bit of garlic salt. Just sprinkle it in. Now that is golden. And I'm going to, of course, add a third of my meat in here. You can do this without meat if you don't want to. If you're not a meat eater, it is good without the meat too, because that's the way I used to make it all the time. But of course, those of us who like meat had to get a little bit of meat in there. All right. Now we're ready for the last and final layer. And we're going to do the last layer, of course. Noodle, sauce. And on this layer, we're going to do it just a little bit different. I'm going to put the cottage cheese on, the meat on, the Parmesan on, and then the mozzarella. Because you want the mozz on the very top layer on the top. I am going to add a little bit more of the Italian blend before I put the meat on there. The Italian seasoning. It just makes it taste really good. And then I'm going to do the Parmesan. Looks good. And the last of the meat mixture is going on next. Layer it all on. I'm going to push it all down because I'm going to put cheese on top. A layer of the mozzarella goes on the top. And hope and pray it doesn't come out the sides because it's so cheesy. But that's okay if it does. Because you know, it's going to be really good. I'm going to put it on something whenever I put it in the oven. Just in case there's some spillage or cheese drippage going on. Which could possibly happen. Because this did fill up this little pan pretty much. And I try to cover the top really well because it is the top layer. And you do want it to kind of cover everything. That way it makes like a top crust on top of it, which is what I like. Ooh, see a spot I missed. Right there. There we go. That looks really good. And now I'm going to put it in the oven for 30 minutes to begin with, because pretty much everything is cooked. I just need to melt the cheese. I'm going to do 30 minutes to begin with, see how it looks, and then we'll go from there. And after about 50 total minutes, this is what the lasagna looks like. I've brought it out of the oven, let it cool down a little bit so I can actually slice it up and eat it. And got a little bit of French toast over here to the side. So let's go ahead and cut into this and get it on a plate. Let's see if my spatula can cut it into it. It can. I've let it cool off enough to where I can actually get it out without too much of a problem, I think. Oh, look at that cheese pull. Do you see it? Do you see it? I hope you can see it. Oh, man. And here is the homemade lasagna. Lots and lots of layers. Cheesy goodness. This is so amazing. And I'm going to taste it here in a second. But this is my homemade lasagna. Now let's take a taste. You could add more cheese to the top if you want more of a cheese pull. Parmesan to the chop, a little garlic salt if you want it a little more garlicky. But there you go. Every time I make this, I forget how good it is. It is so good. And, like I said, you can put a little extra on top if you need it. I don't need the extra calories, but I sure do like what's inside. And this is Mama Hausler's lasagna. You gotta try it. It is amazing. I hope that you've enjoyed this week's family favorite, lasagna. It was so good and so filling. Such a good home-cooked meal. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We would love it if you would become part of our channel's family. And until next week, have a great week. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram and Pinterest and ring that bell. And let our family be a part of your family.